Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of JCPS Backpack Live. I'm Heather Worrell, the Executive Administrator for Digital Innovation here in JCPS, and I am joined today by Digital Innovation Leader Elaine Abinatha, Ms. Susan Price, the Director of Curriculum Design and Innovation, and our most special guest, Amy Jackson, the Goal Clarity Coach at Portland Elementary. Hi, ladies. How is everyone today?
Doing great.
Hey, Susan.
You're great in teaching and learning.
All right. So we are so excited. This has been one of the most on-demand episodes thus far this school year. Amy and her principal, Angela, from Portland Elementary, presented at the principals meeting last week. And as they were presenting about their map data strategy, I looked around and saw so many principals frantically trying to write down everything they were saying. And I said, this right here, this content, this brilliance is a show that others can leverage on demand anytime, anywhere from our channel. So I asked Amy at that meeting, would you be willing to come on the show and talk to Susan? And Susan said, absolutely. We need other schools to learn about Portland's awesome strategy for growing kids with the map data. So here we are, and we're so excited to feature Amy and learn from her today. So Amy, please take it away.
Thank you, Heather. I'm just glad that everybody's able to join us that are here, whether you're live or on demand. And thank you, Susan. And also, Dr. Coleman jumped up and was like, you've got to share this with other people. And Dr. Smith was the same way, like, oh, at our next coaches meeting. But when Heather and I talked, some were like, you know, waiting 2 weeks for GCC meeting, or we can jump on live and get some of this information out quickly. So I'm excited to be here. Again, I'm Amy Jackson. I'm the GCC at Portland, and this is the start of my 5th year here. And just like
Amy, can you hear me real quick? Since you presented at the principals meeting, could you tell our viewers a little bit about the feedback you've received?
Yeah. So as soon as Ms. Hosh and I were finished, the principals were dismissed to go do some work on their map plans. And I don't think Ms. Hosh and I got 10 feet before here was one person talking to us. Here's another person. And I think no fewer than 10 people in that next hour and a half that we were there stopped by. I was like, hey, can we come talk to you some more about the work that you're doing? Hey, can I send my GCC to see a PLC? And then when I got back to school by Friday, I had 5, 6, 7, 8 emails. Yesterday I had another email, which is wonderful things, which, you know, as GCCs, we don't always get a chance to get together and just collab and talk about all the work we do. So I feel like this is going to be a great opportunity for me to share widespread what we're doing, and then I'll be able to take more questions through email or through the video here. So yeah, I was approached to do this video. I think it's going to help you. It was a great experience being at principals meeting, but we were limited on time because the principals had tasks that they needed to work on. So hopefully this will, like I said, be helpful to many of you. I think we can get started. So I'm going to share my screen here. All right. Are we all able to see?
No, not yet, Amy. Try again for us.
Let's see.
Amy, from the Department of Teaching and Learning, I just want to let you and Angela know how proud we are of the work that you are doing. And we also had visitors that day from NWEA. You know, they are very interested in visiting Portland and really looking at that becoming a national model for growth. So I know it's taken, you know, some years to put your systems in place, but I just want to really commend you all on the students there. And I'm really excited that you're sharing your knowledge with us today. It's awesome.
Thank you. I hope other people find it helpful. Is everyone able to see the screen now?
You're good to go.
All right. So I'm going to set that in presentation mode for us. Okay. So again, today, the target audience are other GCCs and instructional coaches and administrators, and even those people that we tag to provide interventions and enrichments for our students. So 3 major goals today: connecting MAP to the JCPS 6 systems, which is something we shared at principals meeting last week, utilizing map data and Google to support your PLC, and then most importantly, how you can leverage PLC using your map data. Okay. All right, so this image, which you've probably started to see everywhere we go, is the 6 essential systems for the district for a strong learning climate. And when we start talking about MAP, you can really start to see how our work with MAP is closely aligned to all 6 systems. So I want to spend a few minutes sharing how we at Portland see MAP as it aligns to the 6 systems. So this image here comes from the district's implementation guide from MAP. I believe it starts on page 23 in that document. At the end of the show, you'll have access to this slideshow. And when you click on that, that will take you right away to the document. But first and foremost, when you think about MAP, you think that it's an assessment and it gives you lots of data. And so the first system that typically jumps out at us is the alignment to system 2, the effective use of data. I think one of the best parts about MAP is that you get that quick turnaround of data. Unlike K-Prep, which is holistic for kids, we don't get just-in-time data that helps us act on it. And that information never really tells us what a kid needs to grow or what the kid's areas of struggle were or what their areas of strength are. And MAP does that for us. And I think that's what's wonderful. We get that quick turnaround of data and we can start working with it within 24 hours. I think as school leaders, we need to be able to support our teachers by having a plan in place ahead of time for when we're having our data meetings and when we're having these ongoing PLCs that can happen right away after testing. I know in the past, before we went online, we would take the MAP test and we may not look at that data for 3 or 4 weeks with teams. We were trying to plan all-day PLCs. It might be 2 or 3 weeks before the 5th grade teachers got to see their data, and that was 3 or 4 weeks of instructional opportunities that they missed. So as leaders, we need to have systems in place ready to go so we can help our teachers use data to work on instruction. I think one of the greatest challenges teachers and leaders face when they're looking at MAP is sometimes the amount of information you can get from it can be very overwhelming. And so what we have found is that MAP does give you lots of answers, but you have to be asking the right questions. So here at Portland, we really focus on using MAP to give us a state of the union, like where are we right now? And then on the more classroom level, where are my students' strengths and areas for growth? And then what are my students ready to learn? And I can use that information to start planning for instruction. Ms. Hosh just joined us. She's in the room. They can't see you, Ms. Hosh, but you can introduce, say hello.
Hosh is in the house.
That's right. And she's been a great supporter of our work with MAP over the last couple of years. The next piece, I think, before you really jump into the planning with teachers is to know that MAP isn't just about getting a score on a kid and using it to predict where they're going to perform on K-Prep. It's important for our leaders to know, it's important for our teachers to know, but it's really important that our students and their parents know exactly where kids are performing, what their struggles are, and what their areas of strength are. So here at Portland, we have a huge focus on student goal setting for reading and math using their MAP data. So that aligns for us with System 4, progress monitoring and analysis of student work. So it's important as GCCs, instructional leaders, administrators to provide the time for your teachers to look at overall RIT scores and have a common process for student goal setting. So it happens the same way at our school from 1st grade through 5th grade. Kindergarten, because they're kindergartners, obviously they have a different process. But the goal is after the kids have been at Portland for a couple of years, they know what it means to be reflective of their own data and to take ownership over that. So in order to do that, you're going to use your achievement, status, and growth projection or summary report. And I'll talk a little bit more later on in the show about how you can use those reports to support goal setting. Goal setting and instructional planning also align to System 3, which is instructional planning and practice for deeper learning. Again, like I said, the data analysis and use for instructional planning has to occur in ongoing PLCs. We moved away last year pretty quickly from like, let's book our teachers in an all-day PLC to look through all of this data and figure out our whole plan for the cycle. And instead, we shifted to, let me get an overall look at my student data, and then let me jump into what I need to look at right now and use that data for just-in-time planning. But that requires us to know what we're going into the MAP continuum for. I think this is a good time if there are any questions about that.
Amy, could you talk about how you use that just-in-time data for really accelerating the growth of your students rather than just a remediation model?
Yeah, so that actually leads into this piece about strengthening teacher practice. And I'll talk a little bit more about the logistics of how we do the work later in the show. That's going to be the meat of it. But at Portland, we were finding, and I know this is true across a lot of our schools, is we have a lot of really great kids that come in and they work hard, but we kept finding that our triangle was upside down, that RTI triangle. And we were finding that, 50 and 60% of our kids were in need of intervention. And so we were trying to do the pull out method, pull kids out, push in support. And what we've really figured out is that we had to shift away from like that deficit mindset of these kids have all of these gaps. And we can really use MAP to help us focus on every kid has something they're ready for. Every kid has something to grow in. So no matter where they're starting, we as the adults can push those students to grow. So if it means that they're the lowest novice or they're 3 grade levels behind, we can start with them and we can start to grow them. So it meant that we had to shift from those exclusive push in and pull out intervention model to let's push the coaches into the classrooms and really support teachers, and let's really support in PLC to strengthen core instruction. And through the focus on core instruction, we've been able to see the shift in our triangle. And what that means is all of our kids are still getting that grade level instruction, but those kids are also getting what they're ready for based on their RIT ranges.
That's awesome.
And one thing I think that lends itself to, if you think about the 6 systems, which I talked to really, what it really talks to is when you think of that equity thread all the way across all 6, is it's getting every kid exposed to standards at their grade level, and then it's intentionally scaffolding up. So kids are getting grade level content every single day through both the lens of what it looks like at grade level, but then also scaffolded at what they need.
Yep. So we've not had a tool before like MAP does. It's so comprehensive in giving that information of what the kids need. So with that being said, it all lends into system 6, which is instructional feedback and professional learning. So MAP data is not just about kids. It's about our instructional practices. And through our work with PLCs, we're not just focusing on every kid and what their deficits are, but what can I do as a teacher to support every student that's in my classroom? So we're focusing on building the capacity of teachers to strengthen that core instruction. We're using that coaching model, and we're really leaning heavily on the learning continuum as a resource for developing targets, along with the district's curriculum frameworks. So our math department, ELA department, social studies, science departments, they do a really good job of supporting teachers with resources and learning targets. But what those do is predict what all of our kids need every day. And the learning continuum can help us figure that out. The other thing I think is important to remember is that MAP is just one data point for us. But it does align to System 4 of progress monitoring and the analysis of student work. So it's great for gathering data, but we do at Portland give many other assessments that help us truly understand where a kid is. So when you're talking K-2, those kids are learning how to read. So our teachers are giving regular running records. We have a system in place for that to collect that data, to analyze that data on an ongoing basis. We also give literacy assessments. We are using the district common assessments. And then we do short cycle every 3-week common formative assessments in reading, math. And then our 4th graders do science and 5th grade does social studies. We also have K-Prep. And then we have data that comes from things like Study Island, Wowzers, Reading Plus, and lots of those other programs we have out there. So because we only give MAP 3 times a year, it's important that we are using other data points to help monitor student growth between those assessments. So this is the piece that I get asked a lot of questions about, is how are you using MAP and supporting your teachers and getting ready for PLC? So a moment of transparency. I used to spend time in PLC with our teachers, printing out the data sheets for them, looking through the data, making them do the highlighting, making them pull out the kids' names of who's high in what and who's low in what. And I realized I was wasting precious time. While it was important for them to see and understand where the data comes from and what the data means, they don't need that from me anymore. What they need from me is Amy, help me get plans for these kids. Help me group these kids. And anything I can get done with them or for them before PLC starts, the happier our PLC is and the more productive it is, the more focused it is on instruction and student growth. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time here talking about how I use map reports and Google tools to get that stuff ready for teachers in PLC. So I just wanted to list the couple of map reports that are our go-tos. We have the achievement, status, and growth, the projection or summary report, the grade breakdown report, the class report, and the learning continuum. So that's what I use for map. And then in Google, I'm not using anything fancy. I'm using the team drives, Google Docs, Sheets, and Slides. So I'll walk you through a couple of the different tools and reports that we're using. So this slide right here shows you a snapshot that I pulled from a teacher's data sheet from last year. I started and maintain a digital data hub for all of our teachers. It used to be that they turn in sheets and sheets and sheets of scores. And then when Ms. Hosh would say, hey, what can you tell me about this kid? Or we've got a kid that needs to go through the MTSS process. We were digging in lots of places to find data on kids. So I found that, you know what, let me put all this stuff in one place. And we have one place to go to look at our triangulation of data. And what we did is we started with our map data. So this is one sheet that I have for teachers in a team drive. So what I've created is one team drive. I've added all of our staff members, and each teacher gets their own data sheet. And on that data sheet, there are lots of tabs at the bottom for the different assessments. So I'm going to exit out of here. And can you still see me there? Okay.
Yeah, real quick, Amy, I wanted to interject. So you have 12 live viewers right now. So that's one of our more popular shows. We have Brooke from Blue Lick Elementary, and she was just asking about going back and rewinding a little bit. And I said, absolutely, that's the power of digital learning. We also have Matt from Barrett Traditional, and we even have a friend from Shelby County, Jennifer Cox, who's a principal out there. So you are impacting cross districts. So good stuff. Keep it up.
Well, hey guys, thanks for hanging out with us today. So I'm utilizing team drives. And so I have one drive called Portland Data Hub 1819, and that's where all things data go. Everybody in our building has access to that because we all own every one of our kids and their progress. And we all, at first this was a compliance thing, and then it turned into, well, let's pull this up on the data hub. Let me see about this kid on the data hub. That's common language that you hear in PLCs and even outside of PLCs here. So these are some samples of those RIT data tracking sheet, and you can see where we set the student goals. Are you able to see on here if I point to something?
We sure can.
Okay, perfect. So what I do on my end is as soon as the kids finish the test, I don't even typically wait for the report to come out. When the kids finish the test, they're raising their hand and they have their goal sheets right next to them in their goal folders. And we're having a quick conference right then. Hey, how did you do? Because it pops up that overall RIT score. I'm writing it down on a sheet, or the classroom teacher's writing it down on a sheet. And then the kids are writing exactly how they performed on their goal setting sheet. So I put a little screen snapshot of one of our data sheets. At the end of this show, I'm going to share a bit.ly with you that's going to take you to a folder where I've shared multiple resources with you. So you can take a deeper look at that. So the kids are writing those things down right then, and I'm jumping over into Google and I am updating the Data Hub live. Then when I sit down with teachers and they work on goal setting, they're putting those goals right here. So everybody in the school knows exactly where the kids performed and what the kids are shooting for. So when you're thinking about this, I just want to clear up that the role of the coach or the admin at this point is get those data sheets created for them, get them in a team drive for everyone to access. I go ahead and enter the overall scores. That means that our teachers don't have to pull a single report. I'm giving that to them in a place that's easy and accessible to them. And then I do like to print out the achievement status growth report because they like to see and be able to handwrite, like when they're doing some stretch goals, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I go ahead and save a copy of that to the Data Hub too. And that way they're not fumbling through lots of reports on NWEA and trying to figure out which one is the one that's giving them the information they need. So then on the teacher's end, they're helping monitor their data sheet. They are inputting the student goals and stretch goals. And then most importantly, they're using that data sheet to help their students set their goals in those conferences immediately following MAP within a few days. So the report that I use to support goal setting, this was shared at the MAP 201 training. This is the achievement status and growth for the projection or summary. Here's a little snapshot of what it looks like. I think it's important to remember to choose your teacher, the class period, and choose the growth comparison period. One thing that they showed us was that you can choose it from fall to winter to see how much growth I should have between this test and the next. And then to also go ahead and show teachers what the projected RIT is from fall to spring, so you know how much growth to expect for a kid over the year. Our kids at Portland already know, here's what I'm expected to grow by the spring, but right now my goal in December is to get this number. So I just wanted to leave you a couple notes or tips on how to do that. And there you get an option to create a PDF report. This is where you can look to see those RIT ranges for kids. That bolded number in the center is the overall RIT score for kids. I've just kind of grayed out our students' names. And then the projected RIT is here. Those are the minimum growth goals for kids. So this is where some of us have to have tough conversations in PLCs. So when they look at this kid at the top who's got a 181, who's significantly below grade level, they're at the 6th percentile of all fourth graders across the country. Teachers will say things like, there's no way this kid can grow 7 points. And we push back and say, but this 7 points is written here because kids just like him across the country do typically score 7 points of growth. And so sometimes that's a real eye opener to the teacher. And that's when we start to have those conversations that say, it's not that the kid is capable of getting the 7 points of growth, but it's up to you to do the work that gets them that growth. So we don't let any teacher, when goal setting, we don't let them set any goals lower than what the projected RIT is, because we have the expectation at Portland that every kid will grow and that we will do whatever it takes to help them grow. So we call these not just our growth goals, but we actually call these our maintenance goals. If we want kids to maintain the percentile that they're at, they need to at least grow to the number listed in that column about projected RIT. Those kids that are below the 50th percentile, that means they're below 50% of their peers across the country. And that's not good enough for us. We want to see these kids grow, but we don't want them to just maintain. We don't want this kid here at the top to stay in the 6th percentile. He'll stay in the 6th percentile if he only gets a 188 next time. So what we do is we take the 7-point growth and we bump it up a couple of points. A lot of people have asked me, well, how do you determine? What's your process for doing that? And, at our initial MAP training last summer, the gentleman told us, take their projected RIT, times it by 1.25 if they're 1 year below. If they're 2 years below, take it and multiply it by 1.5. And then it started to seem like formulaic instead of really thinking about that kid. So we have a discussion within PLC highlighting the kids who are below level, and we say, how many points do we think we can get out of this kid? We want it to be realistic. We want our kids to feel successful, but most important, we want them to start to make gains so that they're not in the 6th percentile anymore.
Other consideration you can have there too is summer slide, because if you just maintain, you also have to consider when that kiddo gets to summer and they're going to hit summer slide, they could potentially even fall further behind. So one thing we're always proud of is our kids have very limited summer slide here, and possibly that is due to the fact that we do push beyond every single time.
Amy, can you stop screen sharing for just a second so we can let everyone see Miss Hosh? Am I saying your last name correctly, Angela?
Yes, hi.
So we're so glad you're here. So this is the dream team, and I was talking about at the principals meeting last week how all the principals were frantically trying to write down everything that you two were saying, and I'm happy to announce that Rhonda Cosby, who's the principal at Chansey, is joining the show and watching live. So hey, Rhonda, shout out to her. So great work. Okay, I heard your voice, Angela, and I just wanted to make sure that we got you on the episode as well. Susan, is there anything you'd like to chime in at this point before they continue?
I just think it's so important and so impressive how they are really planning and setting goals with intentionality. Not just, like Amy said, that's formulaic, because it's really not about the formula, it's about the students. And we know that kids are really going to grow when we are intentionally focusing on them rather than just the score. So, I mean, I just a strong message because I've had a lot of people ask me late stretch goals. And so I give them that very same, there really isn't a formula. You have to look at that student, and you really have to have in those critical conversations within PLCs, but also the conversations that you're having with the kids. That's so important.
Yeah, and in goal setting, we've moved beyond, like we started with, we'll just goal set with the kids the number. So at the beginning of last year, it was like, let's just talk to the kids about their numbers. We want our kids to know their numbers. And we've now elevated that this year. The kids know their numbers in their overall RIT, but now they know their RIT band for all of the domains. And the kids can identify, I'm lowest in geometry and I'm strongest in numbers and operations. So then the kids can build their goals to say, I want to get a 192, but to get a 192, I need to work on learning 3D shapes. I need to learn I need to learn how to apply the formula for area and perimeter. So our students are now having conversations with their teachers about academic goals and academic steps they need to take. Whereas in the past, it was, I want to get a 192 and I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do my homework. Those are great things, and we want you to do that, but the kids need to know what they don't know, and that we're going to support them to get there.
And that's a prepared and resilient learner. Those students who can really talk about not just the number, what is it going to take for me, to achieve? So I think that's awesome. I'm just so proud of this work.
And real quick, I wanted to, Angela and Amy, Jennifer Cox is over on the YouTube live chat, and she says, glad to be learning from Portland today. Sherry Rhodes' husband, Josh, is her AP, and both of these fine educators rave about Portland's leadership. She says, thanks for letting her listen in from Shelby County. So shout out to you, Jennifer.
And I learned a lot from you at ESET last year, and I was like, I ran back to Angela. I was like, over at Shelby, they've got a lot of really cool stuff going on. So it's great to have networks like that going across the state as well.
One way we triangulate is what Amy was saying is when we are setting those goals is sometimes we have to have those conversations in our behavior RTI and even with our mental health counselor, because there's those factors going on, such as a student, we're working with the family to get them into mental health counseling, or even those more challenging conversations when it's a medication issue. So that impacts that goal setting as well. So it's a real triangulation issue.
Yeah, and I would add too, yesterday we took our first shot at student-led conferences.
Yes,
and it was neat to walk around and see the kids with their folders, and they were nervous as could be. It was their first time ever doing it, but they were talking, they were showing their data graphs, they were saying, they were reading off the goals that they had, and then some kids were able to just say it without looking at their sheets. And when our kids take ownership and our teachers take ownership, we're gonna accelerate both. We're gonna have stronger teachers and stronger students.
And it's funny you mentioned student-led conferences, because I just got an email from Maddie Shepard, which we know she's like one name basis in JCPS from the Maddie, and she wants to do a show on student-led conferences coming up to showcase some of our JCPS schools that have a really good strategy for that. So that show's coming soon.
Awesome! We can't wait to watch. We can't wait to watch. All right, so I think I'm going to screen share and jump back over. Are there other questions that are lingering out there at the time? Oh, awesome. All right. I'm working on it. Okay, so I think that leads into this big phrase that that I wanted to put, and there's a reason I put it big and bold. Setting goals doesn't make students move. If you're just putting a number and not taking any action on it, it's a shot in the dark. It's a hope. It's a wish. It's the work that we as teachers do that are going to make students meet those goals.
I want a t-shirt with that on it.
Me too. That would be I think that's a great reminder. Is I would even say when I first got to Portland as a GCC, because it wasn't the culture of the school. I think it was the culture of the district at the time when we had lots of district assessments. They felt like gotchas, and they felt, like in PLC, you were afraid if you came with data that didn't look proficient. And I love that our district has shifted their focus to growth. So it doesn't feel like when we bring data where a kid is low that it's about the kid anymore and it's about bad instruction. It's about, hey, this is where this kid is. And now we can have a conversation about what strategies you can use to try to move that kid forward. So at our school in the last couple of years, we've really had that shift in I, as the teacher, can continue to grow so that my students can grow. Okay, so this is where I think one of my gifts come in is kind of managing this data. So I'm working on a Chromebook right now, so I can't show you all pieces live, but I want to show you as much as I can. But I try to get these reports planned for PLC so that when they come, they have just the information they need to get started with planning. So I'm going to focus here in the next couple of minutes of how you can help your teachers establish the core line and where I need to focus my core instruction, and then also help them figure out how to do some grouping. So when you go in, you're going to focus on the grade breakdown. Now, teachers do not have that option on MAP. Administrators have rights to grade reports, and Go Clarity coaches do. And if they don't, then we need to reach out to our district level MAP people to get those rights to people. So when you're going to the grade report, you're going to choose the term, the grade level, the subject. The reason I would love the grade report is it allows you to export it as a spreadsheet. If you're just doing the class breakdown, you only get it as a PDF, and then you can't manipulate the data. Then you're doing everything by hand again. So then what I do is I download the spreadsheet and I drop it into Google Sheets. I highlight all the data and drop it into there. So it kind of comes out looking funky like this, a lot of information that not everybody needs. So I'm going to walk you through how I set up this information to be most beneficial to teachers. So when you get in there, you export this into Google Sheets, you get all of this information, lots of numbers. It's kind of hard to read. So this is real data. I've changed all the names and student IDs to protect our students' identity here. But all of this data is real. I wanted to show you the real process that we work through. So I kind of start hiding and deleting first anything I don't need. I don't need their student IDs, their middle initials. Always interesting to look at when their middle names pop up. But deleting here, term tested, because I save this as the term, I get rid of that too. I don't want our teachers bogged down looking at all of this information. So I get rid of that. I know what school we teach at, and honestly, I know what grade they are. The one thing I do leave is the content area, but you could delete that as well if you want. And then I go ahead and make this easier to read. So I like to center it and text wrap, because this information at the top here is critical for us. This is the breakdown by domain. I'm a sucker for making things look pretty and uniform. So I like to do all that. Because if you're like me, and there are teachers at my school that are like me, if your data looks messy, they start focusing on how it doesn't look pretty instead of what does the data show me. So at this point, if I want, I can print this out for teachers. But I have gotten rid of everything they need or they don't need. They also don't need the assessment because they know what they took. Delete the column there. So now all I want teachers to focus on is this test writ. Oh, actually, sorry. The writ range I get rid of also. You can hide or delete, but I want them to focus on here's my student's overall writ score. And I like to fill that in, highlight it, I leave it like that. And one thing that has helped us the most is to apply filters. So I can just quickly go in and start filtering this data and not have to make new sheets after new sheet after new sheet. So highlighting the top bar of the columns that I'm going to use to filter, then I'm coming up to the little filter button, and there's nothing fancy you have to do. You just click that button, and then you see these little drop-down arrows that come up. So what I can do now is I can click the filter here, and I can get all of these names. You see I used colors. I really had to Google to figure out 48 different colors. Roy G. Bibb didn't get me very far. One thing that doesn't come out on this report that's helpful to teachers when they're looking at this is to know the teacher name. So I will insert a column to the left, and I will put the teacher. Woo! See this Chromebook? It's real sensitive. So the teacher name, and we'll go in and we'll fill in who the teacher is. So then as we're sorting data, we can see who the kid belongs to. Because remember, right now I'm showing you all of 4th grade. So I'm going to back up. This looks the way that I want it to look, but I want to hop back over to this screen here. and talk a little bit about now that I have that ready for teachers, they have it in that Google Team Drive that's for the data hub. They only have to go there. I don't make them go to NWEA, pull their own reports, and do all that information. I have it ready for them. So I want to back up a little, talk about leveraging PLC, and we'll get back to that data sheet. So this document is a district document. It's also found in the MAP implementation guide. And as Ms. Hosh and I were planning to talk to principals, we were trying to come up with our own way to say, here's what you do with MAP. And then we looked at this and we're like, this is it, guys. It's as simple as choose your focus, create your groups, design your lessons. With the big thing that we failed to do is to choose the focus. We wanted to always quickly go in and say, look at all the data, then create a bunch of groups, and then try to design lessons for all this data that we have. And that's where our teachers started to feel overwhelmed. So it's about being focused on the work. So these also align to the systems. So when you're talking about choosing your focus, you have to think about those essential standards for your grade level, and you have to think about using that effective data. One thing we do at Portland is we develop our own scope and sequence. We take the district's curriculum maps or frameworks, and those are written in cycles. What we ask our teachers to do is then take that whole cycle and break it down week by week. Here is how I'm going to expose all of my students to grade level content. Because whether they're below level or above level, they all have to have exposure to the grade level contents. They have to have experiences in that and have those opportunities. And then when we get down into groups, just like Ms. Hosh said earlier, that's when we can push them a little further or back up to what their readiness level is. So we're using those instructional frameworks, the curriculum frameworks, and this is where you can pull a class map report to kind of see where those core lines are. But I actually help our teachers avoid pulling that class report. I'll show you what I do with that. So we look at our core data, and then we're going to go into creating groups. And that aligns to System 3 of scaffolding learning targets for individual groups and small groups, and also being effective in using our data. Again, we're looking at the instructional frameworks, the curriculum frameworks, and now we're looking at that MAP class breakdown or the grade breakdown, which is the report I showed you. And then the work comes in ongoing PLCs with designing your lessons. And if we're doing a really good job of designing our lessons, we're hitting systems 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and of course, number 1, which is knowing your standards. So when we look at some sample PLC agendas, I always like to have 2 different types of PLCs as soon as we're done with MAP. We quickly do have an overall data meeting where I pull the sheet I showed you at the beginning where it just lists the kids' overall RIT score, because our teachers do want to know a status of their class. And we are going ahead and identifying which students are above the norm, which students are below, which students have met their goals. And then in that meeting, we're talking about what does this data show about our strengths and area of need. But we are not necessarily sitting down and problem solving in that meeting. We're just bringing in awareness, and that helps me as the coach know what my ongoing PLC work needs to look like. But then they also walk away from that meeting ready to goal set with their students. So we walk away from that overall data meeting knowing what the growth target is for the class, what's reasonable for each student, and which domains the students are struggling with the most.
Amy.
Yes?
Real quick, Emily Mintier, who is at Hawthorne Elementary, I don't know if you know her, but in regards to talking about the focus, she said, choosing the focus, such a great point, definitely the way to help teachers from being so overwhelmed. She says, why didn't I think about that?
I say the same thing. Why didn't I think about that when we first started with MAP? It was very overwhelming to us as well. And I shared at principals meeting, we've had MAP for going on 5 years now. And when we used to get it, we would have to print out a 2-inch binder full of the Descartes, I don't even know what. Yeah, the Descartes reports, and it would be thousands of learning targets. If the kid was in this range, they need all of this stuff. And it became overwhelming. And we were just like, well, we're just kind of using our MAP. We're going to take a guess. We'll work on some of this. But we're using MAP really to predict K-Prep. And now we've shifted. Now that we have all of the reports we have now, especially the learning continuum, we're like, yes, this is what we always wanted. This is what we need. It tells us what to do. But if you go look at all of it, you will get overwhelmed. We made those mistakes. And that's part of me doing this show today is let me help you not make the same mistakes that we did. Help you move forward faster. So we do, like I said, have that overall data meeting and then that ongoing PLC work. I do note at the bottom that we do have a culture in our building where our teachers come together for PLC meetings twice a week. Once for reading and once for math. And people ask Ms. Hosh all the time, and myself, how do you get your teachers to do that? So Ms. Hosh, you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
I'm going to unscreen share so you can see us.
You guys are getting so good at this, aren't they, Elaine?
Amy's the talent. So it's
froze.
Oh, yeah, it is frozen. Do you see?
So so the culture, it's the culture in the building. When we initially started with the work with PLC, it just became the idea of what the product was and what teachers walked away with. And when they found the value in going through the process of PLC, and that we were doing, the 1 week reading, the 1 week math, it became, we need more. So when we worked, and moved to having 1 day reading, 1 day math, it's about what they walk away with. And when they walk away with something of value, it has just built that culture that they value what we do in PLC. They don't meet in PLC to meet and to talk and leave with more questions and more work to do. They leave with a work product that they can go back in the classroom and immediately use. So I think it's that they have found the value that it supports the work that they actually do. And therefore it immediately impacts what they can do as students. And so it's just become a culture. And I know when I first listened to the DeFores and things, it's sort of like, how do you transfer to that position? But it really is the work of the team. Amy's led a great PLC time to the point that the school is just a PLC in itself. So it takes a lot of labor, but it's switching that mindset in the PLC that they leave with a product that they value.
Yeah, so much so they meet with me every Monday to talk math. And I hate to say they meet with me. They meet in my room and I'm part of the conversation. I get the stuff ready for them and I'm there as a resource for them as well. So they're in here Mondays for reading, or Mondays for math, Thursdays for reading. And I kid you not, usually on Tuesday, I have another group who wants to come and finish working on this. And on Wednesday, there's another group. And on Friday, they're like, hey, do you have some time today? So they start to really value the work that they do together because they know they're walking away with plans to teach their kids. So like I said, we're not wasting time in PLC anymore, just studying numbers and moving kids around. And we feel guilty sometimes, like when we're like, we have some other work we need to do, like an embedded PD, and we have to take up their PLC time. I mean, that's what they huff about. They're like, you mean we don't get to plan with you today? I'm like, yeah, we got to talk about student-led conferences a little. And then they're like, well, can we talk to you tomorrow about math? And I'm like, yeah. And so I'm like scrambling, putting things on my calendar to do that. So we've just built that culture in our school, and our teachers find value in PLC. And I've been at other schools where, we loved our PLC and we worked really hard. And I think about like when I was in the classroom, if I had MAP, I can imagine how much more we could have got out of PLC in doing that. And that's a shout out to all of my colleagues I've worked with before. I've always been part of great PLCs. I can only imagine like how this would have elevated the work that we had done because I see it here at Portland.
And I think you have to ask that tough question. I think putting the question back out to your teachers of, what do you want out of PLC that will make you better in the classroom? And I think that's hard for a teacher to answer because sometimes we don't want to put ourselves out there. But I think as a leader, sometimes it's hard to hear the answer. But I think we have to put it out there and we have to grapple with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll add to that too. This goes back to the triangulation, and maybe this is off course of MAP. But, we know in kindergarten, our MAP data is data that tracks growth. But in kindergarten and first grade, when we're talking reading, and then also second grade, when we're talking reading, we look at MAP to help us with our core shared reading, but we are always analyzing and looking at our running records and supporting teachers in planning that as well. So the ELA department's done a great job of helping in the literacy project that most of our teachers went through. We have lots of knowledge. So when we come to PLC together, we're looking at all of the resources we have and first and foremost, looking at the data that says, here's what a kid's ready for and here's what's next. So we're really trying to get the most bang for our buck when we have them for that 50 minutes.
Angela, if you guys could go back just for a second, one of the things that you really touched upon in the principals meeting was talking about, when teachers know what they have to teach, but they're really not sure what instructional strategy to use, and how you all support them in that work and helping them to choose what is the best instructional strategy that we're going to use for our students during this lesson or during this time.
So one of the things Amy's really good about is making sure at the different PLCs that she brings in people. So for example, when Kay and Juan are in here working, the reading recovery teachers come in, and some of our ECE teachers are literacy lesson trained and SIM trained. Mm-hmm. So when they come in, we've done a lot of that talk about, first of all, best practices are not easy practices. Just because they're called best, they're really, really hard. And you're going to do a lot of fail at it before you get to that level of best. And sometimes what the kid really, really needs isn't going to be something that we're really, really comfortable teaching. So what it might take is some of those teachers getting released with another teacher taking their place, so that a teacher that's really, really good at it can come in and help scaffold to get the teacher to the level where they feel comfortable teaching it. It also entails Amy sitting at the table with them while they're planning, doing some modeling with the teachers. And the other practice that we do is for the core instruction. Some of these teachers will actually push in and either model teach or co-teach, or even do the small group rotational teach, so that the kids are getting the interventions, but the teachers are also getting the modeling. Sorry. We're an environmental school.
Our lights go off if we sit still too long, so you get to see our turn the lights on, Dave.
Okay, yay! So we're building that capacity in the teachers. So that can look like I said, Amy's doing some modeling of what the transfer of that teaching can look like from conceptual to abstract. It can look like, does a teacher need to push in and help that teacher through that modeling to co-teach to release? Or does it look like helping that teacher build capacity by doing that rotational through the process in the classroom with small groups? So we want to build that comfort zone in the building where teachers understand best practices are challenging and they're hard, but that's what the kids need, and it takes time and it takes failure. So it's really a growth mindset with teachers. And honoring how the teacher learns so that we can really deliver those strong practices to kids.
Yeah. When you have those intentional PLCs and you're looking at the data and you're saying, this week we're only focusing on what I've scoped out for this week, we can have real conversations about those instructional strategies, and it opens up the window. When the teacher says, last week I was working with our fourth grade teachers, and they're like, how do we go from getting them to do the, 1 digit by 1 digit multiplication up to 4 digit? And I was able to just grab some manipulatives and start to show them then. And then it even opened up the conversation. One teacher said, do you care to come in and model that for me, or watch me do it and give me feedback? And I'm like, yes, I'd love to do that, without me pushing, saying, let me come model this lesson for you, or I'm going to come watch you do this. The teachers are now asking for that type of support. And it just goes on to further the relationship of the PLC. So it's not just me doing the work. Our reading recovery teachers, we have a literacy coach that are helping. We have a math intervention coach who goes out and supports teachers as well in that kind of work. So PLCs are not just about data and planning instruction. It's also about building up teacher capacity.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. The screen share. All right. So the sample PLC agenda, we jump into that ongoing PLC work. And like I said, you have to have that prior work done of the scope and sequence. When you go into PLC, it's helpful to know what the teachers are going to be doing next week. If I already know that, I don't have to waste the first 5 minutes saying, okay, what standards are we going to do next week? Do we understand that standard? The teachers have already scoped that out. They've already written out some learning targets. And our job is to then elevate the instructional strategies or elevate the learning target for the students based on what data we now have. So this is just a sample of the work that we do. And I'll admit, the first couple times we get into it, I don't get through 1, 2, and 3. It takes practice at keeping it intentional and focused to get it all done in 50 minutes. But by now we are to that place. because we're not trying to look at the whole picture. We're just looking at going into the data. What do I need for today to plan for next week? So that sample agenda is there for you. So I want to talk more. I want to jump back to this grade breakdown. And when we talk to our teachers about naming your focus, I talked to 4th grade. I was able to look at their scope and sequence, and I was able to say, guys, it looks like your focus right now is in numbers and operations. I cross-checked that with the learning continuum, and I was able to say, yep, what you're working on right now aligns to the things that fall under numbers and operations on MAP. Now, I will put a side note in. MAP doesn't have the same domain names and titles or numbers as the Common Core does, but if you filter it to look by standard, you will see the alignment. Reading does do it nicely. Math is a little fuzzy, but not impossible. So I'm going back to these filters, and I'm no longer looking at this overall RIT score for kids, because right now I'm looking at numbers and operations. Because if you even look across here, I could put this kid Amber, who has a 190, I can put her in a numbers and operation group with a kid who's got a 193, or maybe even a kid is at a 186. When we look at these kids going across, their strengths and weaknesses are relative to the domain. And when it's time to teach, I need to look at where do they fall in that domain, not where they fall overall. So I'll hit that little triangle, sorted A to Z, and voila, my kids are now sorted from lowest to highest. I didn't have to highlight and do any other sorting tricks. I just clicked that button, and now they're in order. So I can see I have 2 kids, Mr. Red and Mr. Yellow, who are falling in the range of 141 to 150. I've got 1 lone kid here at 151, 1 kid at 161. Oh, look, I've got 4 kids here at 171. They all need the same thing. That looks like a group to me. I've got a lot of kids here at 181 to 190. I'm looking up, and then I get down here to the bottom of the page. I'm like, oh, I've got a kid who's even up here at a 211 to 220. So what I do for the teachers at this point, they get this, we look at this, but I jump over. I want to make sure I find the right thing. And I have built them this ongoing Google Sheets. And this is now in their PLC drive. So I'm telling you, we've gone all Google at our school, and I'd be glad to help support you with that. But it's not as hard as it might seem, just a little uncomfortable getting started. But I started this Google slide for some ongoing planning. And we're calling it personalized learning planning using our MAP RIT bands. And this is the one for fall. So just a quick overview. I went ahead and set up a slide deck that has like sample RIT ranges here. And this would be for the geometry domain. The next page would have a place for me to write the band and put in possible learning targets. So I went ahead and did that for all 4 domains. But when the teachers came, I already knew they were going to be working in operations and algebraic thinking. So I'm going to do my fancy here. So what I did is I took these kids and looked at their RIT ranges for numbers and operations, and I matched their names up and put them in these columns. Okay. Actually, I lied. It was numbers and operations algebraic thinking is the one that I modeled for you. So I've got the 1 lone kid at a 131, which is significantly lower than the majority of the class, but that kid is going to get the support they need. Got 1 kid at 151, and I kind of clustered them together on this chart, but I just copied every kid who was at a 161 into this here. They modeled something like this for us at NWEA 201 training. But I wanted to be able to show you today like how I maintain this in Google so that we can use this as an ongoing planning tool and not us looking all over the place for these documents. So one thing you notice is kind of trend data here that the majority of our kids are falling in the 201 to 210 range, with another good chunk here at 191 to 200. So what we say now is my core line, my core instruction needs to happen here at the 201 to 210 because that's where the majority of my kids are working. Now, some of you are going to argue that, but there are a lot of kids here. Yes, there are. And when you get into the learning continuum, you're going to see that there are commonalities between the 191 to 200 and the 201 to 210. I want to jump and show you that. So in the learning continuum, I already have it up. I have a slide deck that or some slides in the slide deck that show you how to get to this if you aren't aware. The critical part is this test view. A lot of times it pops up on the screen and the first thing you see at the top is the class view. And we will start punching in our names. And it gives you cool information because it puts all the kids' names to the side. But when you print that, you've got 20 pages of stuff you still have to work through. This view is much more user-friendly and much more helpful because it helps me dig into what I need to dig into. So I can use these arrows to go through the different domains. But since I looked here and I said 201 to 210 is where the majority of my kids are, I'm putting that right here in the center. So the majority of my kids are ready to develop these skills. And you can go all the way down the center column. And when we talk about focus, this is where we look. I say, what's on your scope and sequence right now? And they said, right now we're looking at 40A2, multiplier divide word problems. So what do I do with those teachers? For this week's planning, we're planning these 2 learning targets. Knowing that I have a good bunch of kids who also need this, but what you start to see is these are pretty common.
Amy?
Yes?
We might have a guest star appearance here in just a second.
Oh.
So if I interrupt you, Dr. Coleman is at Harvard right now doing some awesome work, and she can't be here, but I think someone else may be popping in to say hello. So stay tuned. Also, I wanted to let you know that you have some more chatter on the YouTube Live, and Konica, she says, where do you find the scope and sequence document? That this PD is amazing. That was the first question. And then Megan from Great House also says, it's so helpful to see how other schools are using this data. So back to Konica's question, where do you find the scope and sequence document?
Hey, Konica, that's a really good question. I created it myself. It was actually built out of our work with Fundamental 5. A couple of years ago, we actually did the full-on training with Sean Kane. And he came in and supported our school, not just with the, let me change to me so you can see if that'll turn off real quick. Come on. Stop the screen share. Okay. There I am. So when Sean came and worked with us, he didn't just work on what the Fundamental 5 was and doing walkthroughs. That was the piece he did with our staff and with us as coaches and an admin team. But he also supported us in leadership. And he talked about the importance of doing a common scope and sequence in order to keep our teachers on pace. And I thought, he's talking right to me when I was a classroom teacher. I'd have all these great lessons, and I wanted every kid to get to mastery every time. And I wouldn't move on until they did. And then what did I do? That district assessment's coming up. I'm like, oh gosh, I've got 7 standards I haven't taught yet. And I'd freak out. And the teachers here started to freak out. They're like, but we're running out of time. We can't get all of this. And so what he said is you have to build yourself a scope and sequence to force yourself to keep moving, or you will get caught up on a couple of standards. And you have to ensure that every kid gets exposure to everything. But that's that equity piece, but that's also where it comes in to say, what are my essentials? And when I'm doing my scope and sequence, the essentials get the bulk of my time. And I can start to see where standards fit together, and I don't have to teach them all in isolation. So, Konica, I'd be glad to share. I can add that to the folder that I'm sharing at the end of the video, a blank copy of that. I'd be glad to, maybe talk you guys through the process of how we got the teachers doing that. But they've been doing that. I loosely did it with them when I first got here. Yeah. Now it's the 4th year of solid sit down. Let's scope it out before the cycle starts. And then it helps them. It helps me. It helps Ms. Hosh know where we are, where we're going. It helps with professional development. It's really been a game changer at our school. And at first I didn't know that the teachers liked it. I thought maybe they think it's a compliance thing. Like I'm making them scope out what they're doing for the next month. But number one thing they ask for, can we have some time to do scope and sequence for the next cycle? And I'm like, oh, you like that? Yeah. And then they saw the value in it. So they see where it continues to help them even today. I hope that helped answer that question.
And Dr. Smith is she's going to pull over. She has been listening to the show, and she's so excited. She's going to pull over and open up her laptop and hop on the show.
Oh, be safe doing that.
Yeah, I told her, I was like, just because she was listening and she's excited about it. So anyways, she hopefully will be able to hop on. And if not, I know that she is really excited about what you're sharing. Awesome.
Okay. Be safe, Dr. Smith. All right. So back to the learning continuum. This is the teachers I already knew from that scope and sequence. They were working on this standard. So in PLC this week, all I asked them to focus in the learning continuum was on this. So then we started to talk about the core instruction. How do I plan core instruction around these two learning targets? Because they directly align to what I said I was going to teach. Then I can hop up. I have that kid at the 231, and I look under that same standard. Oh, wait, it's not there. It tells me that that kid, he doesn't need that anymore, and I can jump up and give him something different. I can move to something else on his continuum. But when I'm looking at 40A1, or I'm sorry, 40A2, I can jump up, and I know that the kid at the 211, those kids there, they still need this.
And there she is. Hi, Dr. Smith.
Hey. Hi. Oh, I don't think it was screen sharing. Hey.
Dr. Smith, you were just unmuted. And there you are. Yeah, I know that you were really excited about having Portland share. Can you tell us a little bit about their strategy that has you so excited?
So I think one of the things that is so powerful about the work that they're doing at Portland under Angela and Amy's leadership is their ability to use these tools and Google to actually transform how data is being shared, how strategies and support are being shared, how they're tracking and monitoring the progress over time. And I think that speaks to effective implementation of not only having a growth strategy for MAP and how to design and plan for instruction, but it also is about how they're tracking and monitoring and providing that support in a more efficient and effective way, bringing about a lot of transparency to the work so that everyone has a common understanding of what's happening for students and specific populations of students in the building. So I'm thrilled that they've had this chance, and I've heard that they've gotten a lot of really good feedback all throughout this session today. I just say kudos to them and Heather allowing us to have this space to share more broadly. So the questions coming in are great. You can already hear, from different folks that they want to have access to this tool or that tool or resources. And this is a really powerful way that's going to move instructional practice in the district. So thanks to all of you all for engaging in this way. And I safely pulled over.
I'm so glad. I'm looking out of your window. I'm like, that tree's not moving. So I think that's a tree.
That's right. That's right. But I've been listening for quite some time from my drive to this place where I could stop.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Thanks for joining us and for putting that in there.
Thanks for your support. You're doing a great work with your vision and leading the district. And I just wanted to give you a shout out. So early on, just to deviate for a second to backpack, because we live, breathe, eat, and sleep backpack. Dr. Smith from the beginning said, at the school level, the importance of student leadership with this initiative. And I'm happy to say that Monday we rolled out our strategy for the student level backpack teams. And I'm already seeing on Twitter, people are meeting with their student teams. So thank you, Dr. Smith, for your strong vision for all of us. And I'm honored to work on your team. Thanks for being here.
Great. Good work.
Yes. Thanks for your leadership. All right. So I think I forgot to screen share when I was jump back over. Let's see. All right. So as I was saying, you can scroll through here to start to differentiate then for your small groups. So one thing that's different is in the past, we've wanted to say these kids are really low. Let's pick the area they're lowest in right now and work on that. And instead, we want to have some continuity for the kids. We want it to make sense for them, like why they're working on what they're working on. So if the whole class is working in operations algebraic thinking for a whole group, we want them all working within that in small group. It just may mean that they're working on a different standard or a different level of the standard. I'm in there. So when you're in the continuum, when you're helping teachers plan for core instruction, it's critical that when you go to edit display options, you group by standard and you do the grade level you're working on. When it's time then to start talking about your kids that are below grade level and differentiating instruction for them or personalizing it for them, that's when you start to click into the different grade levels so you can back up to the standards that those kids need. Because if they're not at 4th grade, they may need to back up to 3rd grade. And by clicking that, you can filter that information here to help guide you as you're doing your learning targets. So I talk a little more about it on the slideshow, but I'm just going to kind of ad lib as we go here. So this work, again, I do for the teachers before they ever get here. And what we then do is we plan, first 15 minutes or so, let's plan the core instruction. I know I'm in 201 for most. Let's go to the learning continuum. Boom, that's done. Let's move on to our small groups. As an aside, again, this is 2 classes that you're seeing here. This is all of our 4th graders, which by pulling this for our teachers, it naturally led into the conversation of, oh, you've got a kid at 171? Well, I've got 3 of them. Maybe they can hop over to my class for their small group. And so then our teachers naturally, without us telling them, hey, maybe you should, share kids or start blending your kids for math group or math workshop, they started doing it on their own because they said there's no reason for me to teach 1 kid at the 211 and you teach 2 of them. I'll take all 3 of them. You take my 1 kid in the 161. So that's been a powerful practice. It's come naturally out of PLC as well. So the next piece within this Google slide is we go into the learning continuum, and I just kind of copy those learning targets for the teachers. So here's what it says the kids at 151 need, 161. I'm going to hop down to where they were planning the core instruction. So it was all copied there. And then what we did in our conversation was to kind of put it in our own language and attach it to that standard. And it's all written here. So again, my teachers don't have to go back to the learning continuum now. It's right here in their document in their Google Drive on the Google Slides. And what I've asked them to do is as we start to plan, you can just highlight or indicate in some way that you have addressed those learning targets with a group of kids in the core. You can see here on the same screen, this is what the kids in 211 need. Well, I'm going to work on this in whole group. I can already work on this with my small group. They're going to be ready for it when we talk about it in the core. So this is kind of the way right now, low key, we're helping our teachers monitor their progress through the learning targets that they're getting from the learning continuum. Again, all of this is aligned to our scope and sequence, which is aligned to our district curriculum frameworks. So I kind of show a slide right here that kind of, that kind of lays that out with the big picture of majority class here, focus your mini lessons, or your number talks here, and your small groups start to naturally form this way.
Amy,
yes.
On the live chat, Megan asks, or Terry was asking if there is a breakdown report, and Megan said yes, under class breakdown report. And so there's some dialogue going on, and we have some friends from Conway Middle, so that's where Connica's from. So lots of different schools learning with you today. Emily says, I love this personalized learning plan for teams. Do you have a template that you can share?
Yes. So at the very end of the show, I will share a bit.ly link with you. And that link's going to take you to a folder where I have attached samples of each of these items that you can use as templates. But just remember that right now they're shared documents and done as view only. You will need to download them into your own Google Drive.
Elaine, so Elaine is working our control panel. She's one of our digital innovation leaders. And Elaine, you'll also be able to share these resources in our show notes, correct?
Absolutely. All of these items will be in the resources link underneath, and along with some other tips as well, with link to other shows that may help you with like organizing different things in your drive.
And Amy, Megan also mentioned on the live chat that they have transitioned to using this report this year, and she says she's found it to be very beneficial. She says at times the learning continuum can be overwhelming, and it helps them focus. So
yes, I agree with Megan. And Megan and I did some work together at over the summer with PBL training, and she and I were really looking at Google and talking about how we're using these things in our school and how you just have to jump in with it, and the teachers will come along with you. We just have to support the ones who need support with it. So, hey, Megan, thanks for coming in. So I'm going to kind of skip through these slides because I feel like I addressed those showing it to you live. This little snapshot reinforces that I'm creating those charts for them ahead of time. I'm listing the skills and standards, and then I just ask the teachers as we're doing the planning to go in and highlight. Now, this is the part where I'm a little loose in PLC. If you look at my 4th grade teachers right now, they're attaching standards here and they're highlighting in white. Our second grade team, you know, and our teachers like numbered them and ordered them. The second grade team, they have a different system, but they're using the same method to do it, but they have a different system for keeping track. So it's the work that's most important, but if I can have it prepared for them so they can focus on the work, even better for them. All right, so I think that's the end of it. I'll leave this up for a second if you want to jot it down, or it will be in the video notes, but there's the bit.ly. It does go to my drive that I have a specific folder in, and you will find resources for this. I'm making a note right now that I'm going to add the template for the scope and sequence, so you can take a look at that as well. For those of you that are out there live, are there other resources that maybe I mentioned but didn't show you that you might like to see?
Amy, I will share with you the map implementation guide, the digital version of that, because that also has the winter and data conversation. So I will email that to you so that you can add that to the resources to teachers.
Yes. Actually, I might already have that in there from where you shared it from another meeting. I'll have to go back and look, but I think that's important. The PLC work will slightly shift when it comes winter time, because we then do have growth data. So in the fall, you don't have something that says the kid met a growth goal or not. But in the winter, we will have that information. And so then we do have to have the conversation of who grew and did they meet their goal? And if they didn't, what do we need to do differently? And that's something that Angela has pushed me on since the beginning. Is it's not about reteaching. It's about teaching something different, because whatever strategy you did the first time wasn't effective for that kid. And that's okay, because it did work for some kids, but not all of them. What are you going to do as your action plan to go back and give that kid a different strategy, a different text, not just redoing the same thing? Because we know how that is. Like, you know, in basketball, like you didn't make the free throw, so you get up there and you shoot the free throw again and again and hope it goes in, or you get up there and you adjust your shot. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get up and we're going to adjust our instruction to give the kids something a little different and hope to meet that goal.
So GCCs, a lot of you may have heard your principals come back and talk, that because one of the things that we shared with them is you may be in a position right now where you're just now looking at your September data. Some of you, that they may be talking to you about getting ready for December, because one of the things we shared at principal meeting was you're sort of in 1 foot in September, 1 foot going in December, because the planning's going to shift. You should already be thinking about when are we giving the fall or giving the winter test. Sorry.
Again.
When are we giving the winter test? How are we setting up logistically to give that test? We need to get ready to scope and sequence, because that needs to be done, because as soon as we give the December test and pull that data, how are we going to use that data to look at it with teachers, look at kid growth, and go ahead and start planning? You need to be prepared going into the test to talk about student goals, so that as students are taking the test, they can be aware of the goal they want to attain. Proctoring is super, super important. We shared with principals that over the first couple of years as we implemented MAP, that we would have 8 to 10 people in the room proctoring, because it is critical that students are giving that best effort, and that they're in the manual that is shared, it talks about how to stop the test and restart if you have to give a kid a minute to get reset. All of those are critical elements that you already need to be thinking about going into the winter test, because that takes some logistical planning. So as the GCC or whoever you work with to do that logistics, you need to be having your mind not only right now and that work, critical work as you're going through doing that instruction with kids, but also getting set for December. So it's a little bit of a brain thing, being present and future, but important work. It's hard work. I hope you and your principal are getting your team on, and whatever we can do to support you in your MAP work, we're happy to do it. Yeah. Amy's awesome.
She's growing me here. I think that's the other piece too, is our instructional leadership team really works together And we're constantly reevaluating what we're doing and making sure it's effective. And when it's not, we're okay to say, let's try something different. We don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We have lots of good practices happening in our school, but we just make tweaks along the way. And our teachers appreciate that about us, that we don't say, stop everything, now we're going to do this. We're just modifying things as we go along if it's not effective.
Well, just
we're getting best at MAP.
Someone who appreciates well thought out strategy. Like, I just think you all, I said dream team earlier, but what you've done is you've pulled together talented people. You've developed a strategy. You're thinking way down the road, which I loved it when you said that, Angela, at the principals meeting. You said, we're already thinking about December. Whereas a lot of teams are just thinking about this data they just got in their hands. You're already looking forward and are ready to roll out that game plan next. So I just appreciate your vision and your strategy, and then what you've done so successfully that I think this show will help a lot of other people do is you've leveraged the digital tools to force and multiply that strategy and allow for transparency and collaboration and efficiency. And that's what I'm hoping other people will see as a result of you all sharing today. So just strong leadership all the way around. And I'm happy to give the principals the power pause with this episode, because I have a feeling in the Gold Clarity Coaches, a lot of people are going to be rewinding and rewatching parts of this episode. So kudos to you both. Susan, anything you want to add?
I just want to do it just a second kudos, because they are certainly leading the way at Portland and the model that we all aspiring to. So appreciate your all's hard work, appreciate your disruptive leadership. And I'm just excited that I'm scheduling some time to come out and spend in your PLC so that I grow as a learner as well. So thanks. You guys are just great.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for the opportunity to do this. It helps us share with our colleagues. And I was sharing at the beginning before you got in here about how many people were approaching. And for those of you that did email me, I think I emailed each of you back or have reached out. If this video, if you still have open, questions that didn't get answered through the video, feel free to shoot those emails to me and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I also know we have an upcoming GCC meeting next week. So we can touch base during some break time there as well.
And we also are now slotted to be at the 2 upcoming assistant principal meetings. So
nice to meet you.
See y'all there.
Yay. And you'll be able to give them this episode and just say, we have a whole episode about that, and just share it with them now. So Elaine, as we close out the show, can you talk to us about upcoming episodes on JCPS Backpack Live that are coming up soon?
Absolutely. So we have a show tomorrow, and I'm going to pull that up real quick for us. But if you have not hit the subscribe button while you're on YouTube, do that for us so that we can, you'll continue to get support and reminders of the different shows that are going to be coming up. So we have, let me pull this up.
And I think we're at almost 600 subscribers now. So we are growing.
We are. So tomorrow we have a show on Robot Virtual World with Dr. Lisa Revel and Christine Jones-Graziano, and they're going to share with us that. And tomorrow, that's at 11 a.m. And again, remember, just hit that subscribe button. Also on next week, we are going to have, or Friday, we are also having the Backpack Camp number 2, so that if you are a leader in your school and you were not able to attend, or you need to rewind and power a pause, we're going to have that as well the rest of this week.
So Friday,
like I said,
yep, that's a repeat of Monday's backpack training camp. So if people couldn't attend because they were at racial equity training, we will give you the power pause and you can watch that training all over again live this Friday or anytime on demand on our show. Okay, thanks Elaine, and thanks everyone for coming on today's show. Until next time, bye-bye.
Yeah.